that day shall a man cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which they made every one for himself to worship, to the moles and to the bats, to go into the clefts of the rocks and into the tops of the ragged rocks, for fear of the Lord, for the glory of his majesty, when he riseth to shake terribly the earth. Cease ye from man whose breath is in his nostrils, for wearied is he to be accounted of.
All right, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Having a little bit of a rough start. All right, but we're good. We're good. All right, we're going to continue in chapter 2 of Daniel. Let's read it. It's a long one. Let's take a sip of water just there. And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians, and the astrologers, and the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream. My spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, The thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream, with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if you show the dream, and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. They answered and said again, Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it. The king answered and said, I know of certainty that ye would gain the time, because ye see the thing is gone from me. But if ye would not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For ye have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me till the time be changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that ye can show me the interpretation thereof. The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, There is not a man upon earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asketh such things at any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requireth. There is none other that can show it before the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain. And they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. Then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, Why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, and that he would show the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house, and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would decree... All right, we're good. 1 second here. Let's just take I got a sniffle of something. All right. That they would desire mercy, mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, Blessed is the name of God forever and ever. For wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings, and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom to the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who hast given me wisdom and might, and hast made known unto me now what we desired of thee. For thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter. Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah, that will make known unto the king the interpretation. The king answered and said unto Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show the king. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, what should come to pass hereafter, and he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes shall make known the interpretation to the king. But for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king, and that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. Okay, whatever. We'll talk about that later. The gist of it is clear. It's not by my wisdom. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, and his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken in pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away. Then no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings. For the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the heaven, hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. And after thee shall rise another kingdom, inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces, and subdueth all things. And as iron breaketh all these, And as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay, and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. But there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And of the toes, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron, part of clay, So shall the kingdom be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another. Even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, and the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known unto the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel, and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. The king answered unto Daniel and said, Of a truth it is, that your God is a God of gods, and a Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal this secret. Then the king made Daniel a great man, and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Then Daniel requested of the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. Then Nebuchadnezzar makes a little image. So it's a really long chapter. And it starts off with the king having this dream, right? King has a dream. And he's a very powerful man. An absolute ruler, king of Babylon. He can actually order just all the wise men killed. That's the kind of power he wields. I was thinking about that. What is really superior about Babylon? Is that because when he describes him, he says he's given all these into your hand. Well, think about how limited the Caesar was. Like, he couldn't just have, citizens had rights. I mean, Caesar could have them killed, I suppose, but it wasn't practiced like that. I don't know. Like the fact that it wouldn't seem at all strange. The guard's like, okay, I'll go kill everybody. Anyways. No, but it was very brutal in the ancient Near East. Certainly, the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, was exceedingly brutal. The Assyria, he had to be, because they had to conquer the Assyrians. And they were just absolutely, they were so brutal, they would put it on like art, They all over their buildings, just how they wanted everyone to know how absolutely terrible they were. They reveled in it. And that's the world, and so the king of Babylon is also an exceedingly brutal man. But he's sort of has this situation, and I'm familiar with the feeling. I once had a dream that seemed very significant to me. I've described it before. But point is, the most significant part, in the dream, I fell into a trance at one point. After I saw something happen, and then I fell into a trance, and then all these words were spoken, and I saw these things, and I woke up and I immediately could not. It was very significant too. I remember being like, "Wow, this is." I remember the feeling that it was important. But when I woke up, I couldn't, and everything seemed to make sense. But I woke up and I couldn't remember anything, except for the part up until I fell into a trance, and the fact that what had happened, but the contents were completely gone. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. It's like you can have this sense that you saw something exceedingly important. I've had that experience in a dream. So I've had dreams where you've just forgotten them and you kind of wanted to. You were curious, maybe. I forgot the dream. I forget most of them, right? They kind of get fuzzy and they drift away. One time I had a dream that was so interesting that afterwards I dictated an account of it because I thought it might make a fun, I don't know what, story or something like that, but it wasn't significant spiritually. That's one of the things that gives me a lot of comfort and helps my faith too, because I don't have a lot of spiritual dreams. Like, God doesn't come to me at night and talk to me in my dreams. which is remarkable because you'd think he would, because he's somebody I think about, somebody I talk to. I'm surprised he doesn't manifest himself in my dreams, meaning, except for the fact that God is real and that he might not want us to just dream of him all the time. And people would say things like, people have God dreams all the time. You know? People have dreams from God all the time. Now, some people tell dream, oh, I have a dream, I have a dream. Not all dreams, it says, out of the multitude of the business cometh forth a dream. And it makes sense that a king would have dreams about kingdoms, doesn't it, sort of, right? And I think this is where, I believe this is exactly where in Daniel it switches to Aramaic. Right here, they say Syriac. That's the same as Aramaic. That's their language. It's very similar to Hebrew. Like, for king is Melech in Hebrew and Melech in Aramaic. I don't know if there's a slight difference in pronunciation. Sorry, Grandma. She always used to tell me it's not pronunciation, it's pronunciation. And that's right. Because you wouldn't want to enunciate something. So, tell thy servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. O king, live forever. Tell us the dream, and we'll interpret it for you. But he already said he's troubled to know it. I want to know what the dream was. The thing is gone from me. I love his threat. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation of, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. It's like, and he wants them to tell him a dream that he can't remember. But he's sort of like, hey, you guys are the magicians. You're supposed to have special powers, right? You know everything, right? And I look at our society in some ways, and it makes me think of the way people hold all these experts in reverence. Everyone's like, oh, go to the experts, go to the experts. They know. And they have this sort of magical ability, like during the pandemic, to know exactly what they should do. And therefore, there was no room for debate, and everyone else had to be censored and shut up. Because the magical magicians know everything. And that's how people in these positions of power, of wisdom, sort of thought leaders and stuff, and politicians, they hold their power, making you think they can fix everything. Anything you want, King, we'll do it for you. We got everything for you. We can tell you exactly what to do. And they tell me the interpretation of my dream. Oh, yeah, I can't remember it. There's limits of human wisdom. That's one of the messages of this chapter. That's what Daniel goes to. Goes to some trouble to point out, but he does. He points it out to Nebuchadnezzar. He could have sat there and just basked in the glory of the knowing what he dreamed. Well, the point is, the wise don't know everything. And King Nebuchadnezzar suspects this. And there's probably a reason why he's feeling so brutal because they, like I said, it's like they know everything. Okay. You keep telling me you know everything. You should run everything. You should be, because what is it? I know everything, therefore I need more power. Now, they don't usually say they know everything, but if only they have enough power, they can make everything better. Right? And the wise men of Babylon, what are these? These are clingers on to the king, advisors whispering in his ear, oh, here's what you should do. Take that field from that guy and give it to my brother. That kind of advice, no doubt, is part of the game. Political power was exercised more brutally back then. Therefore, show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. And Babylon was, a lot of these kingdoms that rise quickly, at the top they become corrupt and top heavy. And the statue kind of shows that a bit. Let the king tell his servants the dream, we will show the interpretation. I know of certainty that you would gain the time because you see the thing is gone from me. I'm going to look at that in another translation just to see what they think the words are. Because it's like, I doubt they've mistranslated it, but it may be. I noticed that some of the word order in Daniel, it's hard to read sometimes. And like I said, I don't pre-read these, so I go at it cold. At most I would ever do is skim. I mean, I might pre-read. It's not some, it's every time it's cold. It's not like, sometimes I do read ahead. But I generally don't read it. I certainly didn't read this ahead. And some of these phrases are hard to read because I don't read every word when I read. I'm always just kind of, my eyes pass over it. And that's a good way to misread things. Because I'm trying to focus on how to read it. All right. So verse 8, let's look at that in a different translation. Let's go right with the Devil's translation, the NIV, here on Bible Hub. In case you're wondering, I usually like to mention that early on in the study, that I give them a plug because I use their thing. But this is fair use, obviously, because it's educational purposes, and we're not just using their stuff. It's not like I'm taking their software and giving it to you. You can go to their site and use it yourself. It's free. Then the king answered, I am certain that you are trying to gain time. Okay, that's kind of what I thought he said, because you realize that this is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me the dream, there's only one penalty for you. Okay, the reason I call the NIV the Devil's translation because some people literally feel like it is. I don't, but it is different in that it is a thought for thought translation. That means they try to peek into the minds of the authors of the scriptures and they tell you what they think they were thinking, as opposed to, well, what are the words here? And then so sometimes the King James has some awkward phrasing because it does more closely, in some ways. I often point out there are definitely flaws in the King James translation. There's no such thing as a perfect translation, as far as I know. Certainly not the King James. All right? I'm not King James only. I'm King James preferred, Just because, it's more beautiful to read. The other ones, it's just wrong. It's like, I want to read something that sounds ancient timesy. Okay, so I think that they're probably right about that. Like, meaning there's very good scholarship that went into the NIV. A lot of times it catches flack for stuff that's just not reasonable. Like when they changed Lucifer to morning star. It's what it says in Hebrew. Lucifer is from the Vulgate, and it's the Latin for morning star. So it's just an anglicized, we call it, we're like, that's Lucifer. Fine. But you're losing something by not seeing what's in the Hebrew. Yes, I believe, too, that refers to Lucifer. They're like, but Jesus is the morning star. Well, then why did the Hebrew Bible use that tag on Satan? It's ironically used. A lot of people don't understand the irony that it exists in the Bible. Because he's not the morning star, of course. But he'd like to be. How art thou fallen from heaven, O morning star? It's like, you aren't the morning star. That's the point. But that's what he supposed himself to be. And that's also referring to the king of Babylon. Most explicitly. And he definitely does have a fall from heaven. And it bears mentioning when, I could quote Isaiah, because Isaiah prophesied of Babylon's rise and also of Babylon's fall, the doom of Babylon. He prophesied the Babylon's doom long before that. Long before the handwriting on the wall and all that. Okay, so the king answered and said, I know of certainty that you would gain the time. Okay. You're trying to gain time because you see that it's gone from me. But if you won't tell me, there's one decree for you. I don't care that you don't know. I know you don't know. That's what I suspect. That's why I want to kill you. Is what I say. That's why I want to kill you. Because you don't know and you can't know. So I don't think, your expertise, you are not really you may have an expertise in a particular field, but you're not this all-knowing, wise person that you think yourself to be. Or anyway, some something along those lines. I mean, obviously I'm reading Nebuchadnezzar a bit, but I think that's acceptable because it's just a method of understanding the story. And it's also, we draw a little, we can draw something out of that. Like I said, I think it does speak to my heart concerning the elites of our time. Not so much I want to, I understand Nebuchadnezzar's feelings, because these people who guide everything, they want all this power because they say they're the ones who should be in control of everything because they know the best. But sometimes they don't, because human wisdom is limited. And it's sort of like, and Nebuchadnezzar sees that, and he's, it's, I don't concur. I don't think that's what you should do. I mean, not simply for this cause. It's almost like he woke up one morning and decided he wanted to just have them killed. It'd be funny if Daniel had come in and said, the king didn't have a dream. You made that up. But, no, but it inspired it, if nothing else. He wanted to know the dream, and he was troubled to know the dream. And he said, I've got all these advisors, magicians, astrologers, sorcerers. I wanted to look at each of those things briefly. I don't know if we'll pull up the full definition of each one, but the magicians, and there's also soothsayers added later, isn't it? Khartoum, that's the engraver, the writer, and that was a magician before, and the astrologers was Shaf, a conjurer or necromancer. We had that word before, and I want to know a little bit more on that. Sorcerers, mentioned in the New Testament, but maybe not the same thing. It's hard to sell. Kashaf. And the Chaldeans, Chaldee. And what that means exactly, I'm not sure. I think actually probably Shaf, a conjurer or necromancer. I go usually to the Brown Driver Biggs on that, because it's like probably Babylonian, loan word from Assyrian. Compared to Aramaic, it's an Assyrian word, probably. That's interesting to me, because I have an idea about this. And then Khartoum, an engraver, writer. I believe this was borrowed from Persian, wasn't it? Or, well, let's see. Oh, wait. The word always applied to Egyptian magicians, except suggests Egyptian origin, but no agreement among Egyptologists. Okay, possibly Egyptian. Kashaf, practicer of sorcery. What does that mean? I don't know. 'Cause I never get that. All right. This is Assyrian, Kasapu, masculine singer. Okay. So we have Assyrian, we have Egyptian, we have another Assyrian, possibly Assyrian. Wait a second. What? 1, 2, 3, 4. Why don't they have 3? Oh, the Chaldeans. Okay, that's Babylonian for sure. I thought we had one that was Persian in origin from Daniel 1. I don't know. There is another word coming up later. Let's see. Where is it? When Daniel says none of the... Let's see. Blessed be God, maintain the unknown. All right, let's see. Oh, wait. It's down here where he interprets it. I thought that was a new chapter for some reason. It's way after. You saw the dream. God of heaven. Wait. I think it's right before that when he does the introduction to the dream. Yeah. There we go. Wait, I thought I saw it. There it is, yeah. The magicians, astrologers, soothsayers up here in verse 27. I'm trying to get on. Okay, astrologers. Ashaf, magicians, is Khartoum again. Soothsayers, different word, Gazar. I'm curious about this. Daniel mentions these Gazar, to cut or determine. Interesting. That's what the definition of it means. Obviously, it has some sort of Syriac, both meanings, biblical Hebrew, usually to divide. Okay, whatever. Interesting. The stone was cut out. Huh. Interesting. It's used here in Daniel of soothsayers, but also the stone was cut out. Interesting. Those men who are, in positions of decision making, probably, right? Okay. My thought was, what is this Chaldeans, though? Well, I think that the magicians, perhaps, and the astrologers and the sorcerers, these are wise men, like they did for the Jews, or to the Jews, I should say, for the Jews. Like they did to the Jews, when they would take captive the royal houses, they would take the best and brightest of them and bring them up to be advisors to the king of Babylon, to be wise men to the king of Babylon. So the ones from Egypt were called magicians, let's just say. And I think that was the one. And the astrologers were from Assyria. And the sorcerers, let's say, were from Syria itself, Damascus. Whatever. Meaning, so these could be the names given to the wise men of different cultures in the area. There were a lot of different cultures, and they could have had magicians, astrologers, and sorcerers. And what that represents is like having a priest, a rabbi, and a pastor. You know what I mean? And then the Chaldeans represent, well, these are the locally grown wise men, actual Babylonians. The Babylonian wise men. So he's got himself surrounded with all these wise men. And some of them are, they've all been taught the language. We can pretty much presume chapter 1 duplicated over every nation that Babylon conquered, which were quite a few. But again, they were mostly city-states, I should say. So, these great empires, that we talk about, what they were empires that took in multiple city-states that would pay tribute. Even Rome itself was a city-state based empire, and perhaps in some ways the last of them. Because everything changed after that. Think about it, from the time of Christ. The world did literally change. That world, the ancient world, came to an end, just as the world of the Bronze Age and the world of Noah. Different ways, obviously. So if you show the dream, you shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream. It's either be cut in pieces and will turn your house into a dunghill. Very explicit. He probably means that literally, and he'll show everyone. Kings, in the ancient time, they were brutal, and they held on to power with that brutality. And of course, showing their close retainers deference and stuff. Every king needs people to support him, It may sound a bit capricious, but the wise men are, Nebuchadnezzar is a military man. That's why he has all the wise men around him. But he's just because maybe he's not a exceedingly well-read person, maybe. More of a military leader, more interested in things like, fighting or sword play, bow work, I don't know, hunting, there's different things that people, like Esau versus Jacob. I'm not sure, but he comes off in this as someone who relies on the wise men but has a skepticism for them. So there's one decree for you. For you have prepared a lying and corrupt words to speak before me. That's what he's saying. You're gonna till the time be changed. Therefore, and that's how you want to sort of play for time. I think in the hopes that he might change his mind, though it doesn't explicitly say that. Till the time be changed. I'm gonna say that's again the way that's a weird way of expressing it. It's probably an expression of an idiom in Hebrew. It's a way of saying stalling. And we have one word for it, and they would say, till the time be changed, till a different time come. So it'd be a different time. And that means You're stalling. You want the time to be changed. Again, we would say what? Because we don't express it like that. But I think that's how they express the idea of stalling. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you shall show me the interpretation thereof. Yeah, and again, why I don't say that just based on my knowledge. I say that based on, like I said, that's why I refer to those other translations, because those scholars the scholarship is much better than it used to be. And so they do better jobs translating. I just don't like that they go into this thought for thought thing, because it's like you lose the raw effect of what the scripture is. And it tells you what to think. I don't like that. Sometimes I want help to know what to think from a translator, as far as what's the thought here? Otherwise, mostly I want it naked. I want the thoughts to express themselves to me freshly. So, well, like I said, I'm neither apologist nor implacable critic when it comes to things like the NIV. It's just, they're all just, we have so many wonderful tools to study the Bible. I would not forbid myself from using any of them. Okay. So the Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Right? They're like, no one can tell you what your dream was. You can't even remember it. There's no king, no ruler that would ask such a thing of their wise men, of their conjurers, astrologers, whatever. Whatever form their wisdom took on, And because here's the thing, you understand. In their wisdom, there's wisdom there. It wasn't like, but it has to be kept in place. Once they get outside of that, it becomes corrupt. Or just men in places of power, the power they have has this tendency to corrupt them. Like you're in a position of power over the health and well-being of a nation. And you can enrich yourself in many ways using that power. And they do. And then when it comes time to look after people's health and well-being, they've been so focused on other things, they actually don't remember what their mission was. And end up doing more harm than good. That's what happened in our lovely pandemic. They silenced others. My wisdom shall reign over all. I know all. When you listen, when you let the wise men rule over you, they don't bring paradise on earth any more than human kings do. No one other that can show it to the king except the gods. They don't live with us. The gods don't dwell among. I mean, they understood they had idols and stuff, but they understood that the idols were representations. You would represent the god and pray to it, and the idea. I assume that the representation was to focus the mind. Because a lot of them, I mean, when the Bible says, they have eyes but they see not, they have ears but they hear not. Idols were common things that people had, and people, I mean, it's a strange thing. I always have there's like I don't know. Like people still have figures and stuff like that. And some of them, it comes close to idolatry, I think, to some degree, sometimes. Especially because, the thoughts that we should have directed towards the living God, when we perpetually have our minds occupied with other thoughts, or our minds focused on other gods, so to speak, other powers that we look to, other things. At least that honor that we have, that is due God. But we don't give it to God, but rather other things. But they knew that the gods did not dwell with flesh. They were not among us. For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree goes out, and they were looking for Daniel and everybody, And Daniel then answers the captain, right? Who is the one who went out to slay everybody. And he says, what's going on? What's the big rush? Why are you killing everybody? What's going on? He's like, hey, can you tell me why we're being killed? And he said, okay. He may know. So he basically, requests to go into the king. The king, he's ordering everyone killed. The other wise men gave their answer. Daniel said, wait, let me talk to the king. He says, give me time. I will show you the interpretation. Now, again, they were asking for time. But they didn't ask for time, actually. You know what? He said to them, you're stalling, you're stalling, you're stalling. You're not accepting what I'm telling you is going on, which is you're going to tell me this dream or you will die. And when they said, we can't tell you, there's no one who can tell you, he said, okay, you die. Now, he hadn't, it's not necessarily had been some plan. He's like, I'm going to, like I said, it almost feels like he woke up and wanted to kill all the wise men. But it's obvious it was triggered by this dream. He became frustrated, probably. His spirit was troubled to know what it was. What did I see? What did I see? I don't know what I saw, but maybe someone can tell me. We have wise men, lots of wise men. They keep making them. They keep bringing people in and teaching them Aramaic and making them wise men. So we have all the wise men. They figured bring all this wisdom together. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon were supposedly one of the wonders of the world, of the ancient world. Babylon was a glorious kingdom. A lot of it, a lot of the riches thereof, get carried off to other places. We don't get to see. Okay, but Daniel goes in and says, give me time. I accept, and by this, I will show you the interpretation. Not give me time. No one can show you the interpretation. Well, they weren't asking for time. They were saying, no one can show you the interpretation. They were hoping he would perhaps cool down and forget about it or something. They wanted to stall for time just to get out of the problem. Daniel is accepting the notion, and for that, he's willing to give him time. You have to do something to find out what by all means, take time and then come and bring me the interpretation. Because if he doesn't bring him the interpretation, the king can perfectly well kill him in a day or two. This can be put off, but he's adamant, I will know the interpretation. So Daniel, in effect, accepts the challenge, accept it on the king's terms, which is, I will show you the interpretation. Okay. Now, he doesn't know, the God hasn't told him he's going to show him the interpretation, but he asked for time so he can go to his friends to make known to them and that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning the secret. This is something that only God can reveal. To desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret. Here. It is through God's mercy that he's going to reveal anything to us. Whatever. We live and breathe by God's mercy. We all have, it rains on the just and the unjust, but there's a greater mercy, of course, for salvation or at a given time. Having something revealed to you, big or small. In many ways, the Lord is, through the gifts he's given. Because sometimes, like Daniel and his friends in the first instance in chapter 1, they prospered, and it was just because they were obedient. They do the right thing, and they prosper. This is something we should know. You can have peace in God knowing you're doing the right thing, even when the circumstances around you are negative. When you're being, as Daniel is brought as a captive, essentially. No better than a slave, really. He's not at liberty. I mean, he's at liberty to be at Babylon and to be a servant to the king and to be really smart and perhaps be murdered, because kings are kind of volatile creatures in these days. And sometimes when things go bad in the state, you kill all the wise men. Imagine there's like something bad happens, right? It's like, okay, how do we keep the peasants happy? How do we keep them from being revolt? We're going to say, well, it's the fault of the wise men. We're going to kill them all in front of you. That's one way to take care of things. The things like that do happen. Okay, and so that we would not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. We don't know either. But they knew that God knew. Which is, that to know that there is a God that knows all the secrets, the secret thoughts of the heart, that can reveal them. The things, the visions of the mind. Then Daniel, it's revealed to him in a night vision. He has, I assume, the same dream. And he realizes this is it. And that may be the whole thing. Daniel just has the same dream. That's actually kind of subtle. You know what I mean? Because, how would you know? Like I said, I don't have dreams about God all the time. Maybe some people do. I don't know. People have written me about dreams, but they're usually pretty, they're not super duper. They're not like Isaiah 6, I was brought up to the altar and the coals of fire. And here's the thing, if you do have a dream like that, I don't know what the point of, you could tell me. But then what proves it is, well, what do you do next? If God takes coals of the altar, the flaming coals from the altar of God and presses it to your lips, then I expect I shall hear from you shortly all the words of God. You know what I mean? Like that's what the kind, you don't get that kind of vision without a ministry being given with it. This, God gives provision in those things we need. Well, many of the things we need, we're fully capable of providing. Jesus needed not to fall off the temple, so he didn't jump. There are things that are built into the system that we know are consequences for actions that we should avoid. God has already shown us the wisdom in many things to know how to walk in a way that is pleasing to God. We all kind of know, right? We know what we should do. Some people don't, true enough. Those of us who have looked into it, we know. There may be some sketchy details, but overall, we know what God wants of us. To walk humbly, to love mercy, to do justly, and of course, faith. But all those things require faith. That's first. He requires faith of us, but faith itself is also a gift. Because it's not anyone who can just believe in Jesus. It's not anyone. It's like, because for all the things that have done very often, Daniel's God, Joseph's God, it doesn't necessarily, just because the tendency is to look at that person as special. People don't connect to the God because they look at the person like Moses or Daniel who's in tune with the Lord, who's receiving wisdom from God and visions from God. They say, wow, you. They don't think like, well, I could do the same. I could just imitate their behavior and I'd have the same access. That's exactly the word Paul uses, access. We have access. with, what was it? I forgot. Access with. Well, I almost want to look that phrase up. I want to just look up access. Because that's an important thing. Like Daniel as a wise man. You know, it does sort of make me think of the idea of access. Meaning, like, someone who has access to the king. Someone who has access to God. Access to power. Okay. There's a couple of things. In whom we have boldness and access with confidence. That's what I was thinking of, Ephesians. Boldness and access with confidence by the faith of him. And it means in Christ. We have this boldness to access God. Because it's a bold thing. To ask God some favor. Why would God do you any favors? You know what I mean? Really. I mean, especially considering the fact that he so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. He's already done that. And so, why, you know, like I said, every little stupid thing I do, he should compensate for? Probably not. But he does sometimes, you know, and bless the Lord. He looks after me. You know, thank God. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever. The wisdom and might are his. These things belong to God. Like I said, ideas are not things that come out of your brain. Though they get put together there very often. It's like a idea reception and processing center. But the mind does not have a, you know, like Einstein wasn't born and E=mc² was buried down in his brain somewhere. He had to go through a lot of things for that idea to get into his head. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. He changeth the times and seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knoweth and knowledge to them that know understanding. Well, you know, what does that mean? Knowledge to them that know understanding. That sounds almost like you might say, oh, well, it's like a word salad. It's just knowledge to them that know understanding. Well, if I think of understanding there is as the way of knowledge, and I'm looking for it here right now. There we go. Understanding. It is a different word. Baina, that know. Yada, to know. Okay. A lot of different words here. Because knowledge is like manda. Knowledge or the power of knowing. To those that know. That means to make known or teach, this one. And then the first one, Bino, which was an understanding. Where's the really? This is the only time it ever occurs in the Bible. Okay, so not a lot of stuff on it. In fact, there is no entry here for the Brown Driver Briggs. Like they literally, I guess they just have you go. It corresponds to Bina, and so they go. You have to go to the. But it's only used once. Oh, no, it's used a couple more times in the Hebrew Bible. Okay, that's why it's only once, because it's Aramaic. Understanding. Discernment. Yeah. Those that know understanding here would be like discernment. We often use the word. And which understanding is a good word too. I mean, you know, but the idea of, like I said, it's the knowledge to have the power of knowing. There's a way of understanding things. And we can obtain knowledge from God. But and again, I'm not talking about going to books and reading. That's not what it's talking about at all. He changes times, seasons, removes kings, and setteth up kings. What does this mean about changing times and seasons? You know? What does he mean by that? He doesn't mean the change of seasons as we know them, does he? No, I don't think so. I think changing the times means like the world, the time goes by and the world changes. There are different times. There are different seasons. And God changes them. They're out of the reach of men. You know what I mean? Like the world goes round and there's nothing men can do to stop it. But God changes things. Even I could say even literally he changes times and seasons by the like I think it was a 536 or something like that was one of the worst years in recorded history because the sun barely shone because the earth encountered something, either a volcano or they weren't sure if it was a volcano. I think it was a volcano. There were some theories about an asteroid, but it was a volcano, I think is what they said. A volcano went off and summer didn't come. Essentially, the sun was barely out for because all the dust and stuff in the air. I mean, major things happen. The world changes, and there's only God has the power to stop or to change or do any of that. Only God has the knowledge of someone else's dream. People say how could God do that? Blah 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 blah. It's not that you always think of him having to go at it as a human would go at it. Imagine if remember what the Satan did to Jesus? He showed him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them in a moment of time. How do you see something like that? Well, we don't really know how to see things like that. I certainly believe that's possible. I mean, as far as I've had things where it's I saw a lot, like in a dream, where it's a lot of things go by. In a moment, you can see a whole lot. Kings come and kings go. The wise get wisdom, and those that have understanding get knowledge. And God reveals the deep and secret things. Those who know the way of understanding is to go to God. The way I get my understanding from the Lord. I prayed to him for understanding and knowledge. Remember when I was a kid, I read the story of Solomon, how he asked for wisdom and not riches and all that. I went and did that, which I've thought about regretting, because I said, like I said, I don't really regret it because though in the land of prosperity, I'm a poor man, I live in a world of horrors. So I'm a rich man. I certainly consider myself a rich man. God has blessed me. Though though I'm sure, men with earthly riches would mock such a notion on my part that I'm wealthy. Not all. I mean, certainly some people will look at me. I've had people, someone once said to me they envied me, in a positive way. Not in a real way, I envy you, I hate you. It was just they saw what I had and they thought I was blessed. It can be that way when we maybe make regrettable decisions about our life. We can regret and then feel something like envy. As long as it's not rooted in hatred, as long as it's just sort of like regret. The envy of regret, I don't think is as poisonous. Because you may not mean envy in the strict sense that we mean it. You know what I mean? You may mean more, not that I envy you so much as I regret my own decisions. If that's the spirit in which it's said, it's everything went right for you, but not blaming other people for, what goes wrong in our life. But that's a sign of narcissism, if you can't take responsibility for your own mess ups. So God reveals deep and secret things. I know this because when I received the Holy Spirit, He revealed deep and secret things to me. At least they were secret from me. I don't really think of them as secret. I proclaim them openly, But even if someone had proclaimed them to me openly, before I received the Spirit, I couldn't have received it. I know this because I didn't. I never received those things until God opened my eyes to them. And I know that that's still true to this day unless I'm always questing after that beam in my own eye. I'm always convinced it's still there. Because it's not okay, once you get it out, you do, it's an attitude. I consider other men better than myself. Or, not so much better. Well, you don't have to think like that. That's not what that actually means. It means to think of other people more than you think of yourself. Everyone has to think, but you might also think them better. I've always had that problem where I think people are just morally superior. Because people do not exhibit all their flaws in public. Whereas I have privy knowledge of all my flaws. I don't worry so much about other people knowing them. I'm mostly concerned with just their mere existence. Again, that's something not to be distressed over, but to be exercised in. If I lack patience, I need to exercise until my patience is stronger. That may mean I have to have troubling circumstances trouble me until I learn to use patience properly. Because God doesn't want to work everything as a miracle for me. But when I need it, I know He can do anything. I said, because I received His power. So I believe it. So he went into Arioch, and the king had ordained to destroy the wise men. And he went and said thus to them, destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me into the king. I will show the king the interpretation. I've got it. After one night. Arioch brings him in and, hey, all right, probably doesn't relish the killing. Killing is messy, especially if he wants them all cut in pieces. All right, guys, let's go. Let's cut them in pieces. Just gross, smelly work. I know that sounds cold, but that's, I said, I doubt well, whatever. The king answered and said unto Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able? And he says this, we're out of time. So, we'll pick it up at verse 27, and we'll talk about the dream itself tomorrow. I probably won't read from the beginning because it is a long chapter. We'll probably read this section here because we've discussed the preliminaries, and so we can go on with the rest. So thanks for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow. As always, God willing. Until then.
In that day shall a man cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which they made every one for himself to worship, to the moles and to the bats, to go into the clefts of the rocks and into the tops of the ragged rocks, for fear of the Lord, for the glory of his majesty, when he